What if I told you that Edgar Lungu's funeral was never just about mourning a former president? That behind the ceremonies, secrets were being traded, pressures mounting, and shocking revelations hidden in Pretoria were shaking Zambia's leadership at its core? Tonight, we uncover Esther Lungu's untold struggles, President Hakainde Hichilema's silent battles, and a mysterious letter that could change Africa's political future. Stay with us. This is bigger than a funeral. It's about power, survival, and truth. In this breaking documentary-style report, we go beyond the funeral of Zambia's former President Edgar Lungu to reveal the untold struggles of Esther Lungu, the hidden pressures on President Hakainde Hichilema (HH), and the shocking revelations from Pretoria that are sending political shockwaves across Africa. This is not just a Zambian story, it's a global one. With families torn, politics exposed, and international players watching closely, Zambia now finds itself at the center of Africa's future. Watch as we connect the dots between funerals, secret struggles, and global fallout. Beyond the funeral mystery. The phrase, "beyond the funeral mystery," encapsulates the enigmatic and contentious circumstances surrounding the death and funeral arrangements of Edgar Lungu, Zambia's president from 2015 to 2021. Lungu, who died on June 5, 2025, in a South African hospital at the age of 68, left behind a legacy marked by significant infrastructure development, but also economic challenges and political polarization. His death, rather than uniting the nation, exposed deep divisions between his family, his political party, the Patriotic Front or PF, and the government led by his successor, President Hakainde Hichilema. Context of the funeral dispute. Edgar Lungu's death was announced via social media by his daughter, followed by a delayed response from President Hichilema, which fueled speculation and criticism among Lungu supporters. The government initially declared a 7-day national mourning period and planned a state funeral at the Mulungushi Conference Center in Lusaka, a venue traditionally used for such events. However, Lungu's family, led by his widow Esther Lungu and daughter Tassila, insisted on a private funeral in South Africa, citing Lungu's explicit wish that Hichilema not be involved in or attend his funeral. This wish stemmed from a long-standing feud between the two leaders, marked by electoral rivalries, allegations of persecution, and personal animosity. The dispute escalated into a legal battle in South Africa, where Lungu died. The Zambian government sought to repatriate his body for a state funeral, arguing that national tradition and public interest required it. The family, supported by the PF, resisted, leading to a Pretoria High Court ruling in August 2025 that favored the government, though the family appealed to South Africa's constitutional court. The standoff has delayed Lungu's burial, leaving his body in a Pretoria morgue under private security due to concerns about unauthorized removal. The mystery. The mystery lies in several unresolved questions. Lungu's final wishes. Why was Lungu so adamant that Hichilema not attend his funeral? Was this purely personal, or did it reflect broader political concerns about how his legacy would be framed? Family's resistance. Why has the Lungu family been so determined to bury him in South Africa, a decision unprecedented for a former Zambian president? Are there underlying fears of political manipulation or safety concerns in Zambia? Government's insistence. Why is the Zambian government so invested in controlling the funeral arrangements, even at the cost of alienating Lungu's family and supporters? Conspiracy theories. Some sources, such as the Zambian Observer, have raised questions about the authenticity of Lungu's body, suggesting the family's refusal to allow body viewing fuels speculation that he might still be alive, or that the body is not his. While these claims lack substantiation, they contribute to the mystery narrative. Analysis. The funeral dispute is not merely about logistics, but a reflection of Zambia's polarized political landscape. Lungu and Hichilema's rivalry dates back to at least 2016, when Lungu narrowly defeated Hichilema in a controversial election. Hichilema was imprisoned for 4 months in 2017 on treason charges after his motorcade allegedly failed to give way to Lungu's, an incident that deepened their enmity. After Hichilema's victory in 2021, Lungu accused the government of harassment, including restricting his movements and denying him travel to South Africa for medical treatment, claims the government denied. The funeral dispute thus became a proxy for this broader conflict, with each side using it to assert control over Lungu's legacy and Zambia's national narrative. The mystery also highlights cultural and legal ambiguities in Zambia regarding the funerals of former presidents. While tradition dictates state funerals at Embassy Park, there is no clear law specifying who controls such arrangements, leading to a tug-of-war as described by constitutional lawyer John Sangwa. This ambiguity has allowed both sides to claim legitimacy, further complicating resolution. Broader implications. The unresolved nature of Lungu's funeral has deepened public disillusionment. For many Zambians, the inability to mourn a former president properly due to competing mourning venues, conflicting condolence books, and cancelled funeral plans has created confusion and fatigue. The dispute risks undermining national unity and reinforcing perceptions of political vendettas, particularly among Lungu supporters, who see the government's actions as disrespectful to his legacy. Esther Lungu's silent struggles revealed. Esther Lungu, the former First Lady, has emerged as a central figure in this saga, navigating immense personal grief while facing public and legal scrutiny. The headline, Esther Lungu's Silent Struggles Revealed, suggests a focus on her emotional, legal, and political challenges, which have been largely overshadowed by the broader funeral dispute. dispute. Personal grief and public role. Esther Lungu's grief is compounded by the public nature of her husband's death and the ensuing controversy. As the widow of a former president, she is expected to uphold a dignified public image while privately mourning her husband of many years. Her affidavit to the Pretoria High Court, where she reiterated Lungu's wish that Hichilema not attend his funeral, reveals the depth of her commitment to honoring her husband's desires, even at the cost of a prolonged legal battle. Her visible distress during court proceedings, alongside her sister-in-law Bertha Lungu's emotional outburst, underscores the personal toll of this dispute. Legal and political challenges. Esther Lungu, along with her daughter Tassila and other family members, faces corruption charges in Zambia, which they deny and claim are politically motivated. These charges, including allegations of vehicle theft, have added to the family's perception of persecution under Hichilema's administration. The legal battle in South Africa, where Esther and her family are challenging the repatriation of Lungu's body, places her in a high-stakes confrontation with the Zambian government. Her affidavit emphasizes the right to dignity and privacy under South African law, framing the funeral as a deeply personal matter rather than a state affair. Silent struggles. The silent aspect of Esther's struggles likely refers to her limited public statements and the emotional burden she carries behind the scenes. Unlike her daughter Tassila or family spokesperson Makibi Zulu, Esther has not been as vocal, possibly to maintain a dignified stance or to avoid further politicizing the situation. However, her actions, filing affidavits, attending court hearings in funeral attire, and resisting government pressure, speak volumes about her resolve. Governance activist Laura Mitty's social media post questioning whether Esther tried to counsel Lungu against dying with anger and half-truths suggests public scrutiny of her moral stance, adding to her silent struggles. Analysis. Esther Lungu's role highlights the intersection of personal loss and political conflict. Her insistence on a private burial in South Africa aligns with her husband's wishes, but also reflects a broader distrust of the Zambian government's intentions. The corruption charges against her and her children fuel this distrust, as the family perceives them as part of a vendetta by Hichilema's administration. This perception is reinforced by Lungu's past accusations of harassment, such as restrictions on his movements and travel. The legal battle in South Africa places Esther in an unprecedented position, a former first lady challenging her own government in a foreign court. This move has drawn criticism from some Zambians, who argue it undermines national dignity, but it also underscores her determination to protect her husband's legacy. The emotional toll is evident in court scenes, such as Bertha Lungu's outburst against Zambia's Attorney General, highlighting the family's frustration and sense of betrayal. Broader implications. Esther Lungu's struggles resonate with many Zambians who feel caught between personal loyalties and national expectations. Her case raises questions about the treatment of former first families and the balance between state authority and individual rights. The corruption charges, whether substantiated or not, complicate her public image, as some view her as a victim of political persecution, while others see her actions as defiant or out of touch. Her silent struggles thus reflect broader themes of gender, power, and resilience in Zambian politics. HH under pressure. Hidden challenges in State House. President Hakainde Hichilema, referred to as HH, faces significant pressure as he navigates the fallout from Lungu's death and the funeral dispute. The headline, HH under pressure, hidden challenges in State House, suggests internal and external challenges that threaten his leadership and public image. Political pressure. Hichilema's handling of Lungu's death has been a litmus test for his leadership. His delayed response to the announcement, 3 hours after Lungu's daughter's social media post, drew criticism from Lungu's supporters, who saw it as a lack of respect. Information Minister Cornelius Mwitwa defended the delay, citing precedent that the head of state does not announce a predecessor's death, but this did little to quell accusations of insensitivity. Hichilema's call for unity and peace in his public addresses has been perceived by some as hollow, given the ongoing feud with Lungu's family and the PF. The government's insistence on a state funeral, despite Lungu's explicit wishes, has further fueled perceptions of political overreach. The decision to pursue legal action in South Africa to repatriate Lungu's body has been controversial, with critics arguing it prioritizes political control over cultural sensitivity. Zambian historian Sishiwa has criticized Hichilema for failing to rein in his officials and supporters, whose celebratory posts, e.g., "It's coming home," after the Pretoria court ruling were seen as undignified. Economic and social challenges. Beyond the funeral dispute, Hichilema faces broader challenges that compound the pressure. Zambia's economy, heavily reliant on copper exports, has struggled since the 2020 debt default under Lungu's administration. While Hichilema has been credited with reducing inflation and implementing free education, posts on X from 2023 highlight public discontent with a high cost of living and perceptions of economic mismanagement. The funeral dispute distracts from these pressing issues, as public discourse remains dominated by the saga rather than solutions to economic woes. Internal party dynamics. Within the United Party for National Development (UPND), Hichilema must manage internal expectations and factionalism. The PF's weakened state following Lungu's death gives the UPND a strategic advantage ahead of the 2026 elections, but it also raises the stakes for Hichilema to deliver on promises of economic recovery and democratic democratic governance. The funeral dispute risks alienating moderates who value national unity, as well as reinforcing perceptions of vindictiveness among Lungu's supporters. Analysis: Hichilema's challenges are both visible and hidden. Publicly, he faces criticism for his handling of the funeral, which has been framed by opponents as an attempt to control Lungu's legacy for political gain. Privately, he must navigate the delicate balance of asserting state authority while addressing accusations of personal vendettas. The legal battle in South Africa, while a victory for the government in the Pretoria High Court, has prolonged the dispute and drawn international attention, potentially damaging Hichilema's image as a unifying leader. The hidden challenges likely include managing the UPND's internal cohesion, addressing economic pressures, and countering the PF's narrative of persecution. The funeral dispute has also strained Zambia's relations with South Africa, as evidenced by Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola's visit to Lusaka to mediate tensions. Hichilema's decision to cut short the national mourning period after the family's refusal to repatriate Lungu's body was a bold move, but risked further polarizing the nation. Broader implications: Hichilema's handling of this crisis will shape his legacy and Zambia's democratic trajectory. A failure to resolve the dispute respectfully could deepen divisions, strengthen the opposition's narrative of persecution, and undermine public trust in his administration. Conversely, a resolution that balances national tradition with the family's wishes could demonstrate statesmanship, though this seems increasingly unlikely given the entrenched positions. The pressure on Hichilema underscores the challenges of leading a polarized nation, particularly when personal and political histories collide. Pretoria's shocking revelation uncovered. The headline, "Pretoria's shocking revelation uncovered," likely refers to the Pretoria High Court's August 2025 ruling that ordered the repatriation of Edgar Lungu's body to Zambia for a state funeral against the wishes of his family. This decision, and the legal proceedings surrounding it, have been a focal point of the funeral saga, drawing international attention and raising questions about sovereignty, dignity, and legal precedent. The court ruling. On August 8, 2025, Judge Aubrey Ledwaba of the Pretoria High Court ruled that the Zambian government was entitled to repatriate Lungu's body, ordering the family to immediately surrender it to authorities. The ruling cited the public interest and Zambia's tradition of state funerals for former presidents, referencing the precedent set by the burial of Kenneth Kaunda. The decision was a significant victory for the Zambian government, which argued that Lungu belongs to the nation of Zambia and should be buried at Embassy Park with full military honors. The Lungu family, visibly distraught, responded by filing an appeal to South Africa's Constitutional Court, arguing that the burial was a private family matter protected by the right to dignity and privacy under South African law. The appeal has delayed the repatriation, with Lungu's body remaining in a Pretoria morgue under private security. The court's decision to postpone further hearings to August 18, 2025, to allow negotiations reflects the complexity of the case, which balances international law, cultural norms, and political sensitivities. The shocking revelation. The shocking revelation could refer to several aspects. Court's authority. The Pretoria High Court's willingness to intervene in a dispute involving a foreign former head of state was unexpected, raising questions about South Africa's role in a Zambian matter. The ruling effectively prioritized Zambia's national interest over the family's wishes, a decision some view as infringing on personal rights. Family's resistance. The family's affidavit, particularly Esther Lungu's revelation of Lungu's explicit instructions against Hichilema's involvement, highlighted the depth of the feud and shocked observers who expected a more conciliatory approach. Conspiracy theories. Posts from the Zambian Observer suggest a public suspicion that the family's refusal to allow body viewing fuels speculation about the authenticity of Lungu's death. While unsubstantiated, these theories have added a layer of intrigue to the court proceedings, contributing to the shocking narrative. Analysis. The Pretoria ruling underscores the tension between state authority and individual rights. The Zambian government's legal strategy, led by Attorney General Mulalo Kabesha, relied on precedent and national tradition, arguing that a former president's burial is a matter of public interest. However, the family's appeal to South Africa's Constitutional Court invokes universal principles of dignity and privacy, framing the dispute as a human rights issue. The involvement of South African courts in a Zambian matter has also raised questions about sovereignty and the role of foreign judiciaries in resolving such disputes. The emotional scenes in court, particularly Bertha Lungu's outburst, highlight the human cost of this legal battle. The family's perception of persecution, reinforced by ongoing corruption charges, has fueled their determination to resist repatriation. Meanwhile, the government's celebratory response, such as supporters' "It's Coming Home" posts, has been criticized as undignified, further escalating tensions. Broader implications. The Pretoria ruling has implications for Zambia-South Africa relations, as it places South Africa in the delicate position of mediating a foreign dispute. The case also sets a precedent for how former heads of state are treated posthumously, potentially influencing future disputes in Africa, where burial controversies are not uncommon, e.g., Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. The shocking revelation narrative reflects public fascination with the saga, amplified by media coverage and conspiracy theories, which could further erode trust trust in both Zambian and South African institutions. The global fallout, Africa and the world react. The funeral dispute has transcended Zambia's borders, drawing reactions from African leaders, regional organizations, and the global community. The headline, "The Global Fallout, Africa and the World React," suggests that Lungu's death and the ensuing controversy have implications for regional diplomacy, African unity, and Zambia's international image. African reactions. South Africa. As the site of Lungu's death and the legal battle, South Africa has been thrust into the spotlight. Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola's visit to Lusaka on June 22, 2025, to meet with Hichilema reflects South Africa's attempt to mediate tensions while respecting the family's wishes. The Pretoria court's involvement has drawn mixed reactions, with some praising its impartiality and others questioning its jurisdiction over a Zambian matter. Southern African Development Community (SADC) Zambia's call for SADC mediation in its strained relations with Zimbabwe, following President Mnangagwa's comments about U.S. militarization in Zambia, indicates broader regional tensions. Lungu's funeral dispute has further complicated Zambia's regional standing, as it highlights internal divisions that could weaken its influence within SADC. Other African nations. The dispute has drawn comparisons to similar burial controversies, such as those involving Angola's Jonas Savimbi and Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe. African leaders have largely remained silent, likely to avoid taking sides in a sensitive matter, but civil society groups and media across the continent have called for a resolution that respects both national tradition and family wishes. Global reactions. The international community, particularly media outlets like the BBC, the New York Times, Reuters, and Al Jazeera, has covered the dispute extensively, framing it as a case study in political rivalry and post-colonial governance. The coverage highlights human rights concerns. The family's appeal to South Africa's constitutional court, citing privacy and dignity, has resonated with human rights organizations, which see the case as a test of individual rights versus state authority. Diplomatic implications. The involvement of South African courts has raised questions about international law and the treatment of foreign dignitaries. The U.S. and other Western nations, while not directly involved, are monitoring the situation given Zambia's strategic importance as a copper producer and a democratic state in southern Africa. Media fascination. The global media's focus on the undignified row and conspiracy theories reflects a broader fascination with African political dramas, often framed through a lens of instability or dysfunction, which risks oversimplifying Zambia's complex political landscape. Analysis. The global fallout underscores Zambia's position as a stable but polarized democracy in a region often marked by political volatility. The dispute has embarrassed Zambia on the international stage, as the failure to bury a former president 2 months after his death contrasts with the country's reputation for peaceful transitions of power. The involvement of South African courts has also highlighted the complexities of cross-border legal disputes, particularly when they involve high-profile figures. The regional reaction, particularly from SADC, reflects the delicate balance of sovereignty and cooperation in southern Africa. Zambia's economic challenges and its role as a copper exporter make its stability a concern for both African and global stakeholders. The funeral dispute, while a domestic issue, has thus become a lens through which to view broader questions of governance, reconciliation, and regional unity. Broader implications. The global attention to Lungu's funeral could influence Zambia's international relations, particularly with South Africa and SADC. A prolonged dispute risks portraying Zambia as unable to manage its internal affairs, potentially affecting foreign investment and diplomatic trust. Conversely, a resolution that respects both national tradition and the family's wishes could enhance Zambia's reputation as a mature democracy capable of navigating complex crises. What this means for Zambia's future. The final headline, "What this means for Zambia's future," invites reflection on the long-term implications of the funeral dispute for Zambia's political, social, and economic landscape. The saga has exposed fault lines that could shape the country's trajectory as it approaches the 2026 elections and beyond. Political implications. Polarization and opposition weakness. Lungu's death has left the PF fragmented, as noted by ISS Africa, with the party relying heavily on his charismatic authority rather than strong institutional structures. The funeral dispute has further weakened the PF, as internal factionalism and the lack of a clear successor diminish its ability to challenge Hichilema in 2026. However, the dispute has also galvanized Lungu's supporters, who see the government's actions as vindictive, potentially fueling opposition narratives. Hichilema's leadership. The dispute tests Hichilema's ability to unite a divided nation. His administration's economic reforms, such as reducing inflation and implementing free education, have been praised, but the funeral saga risks overshadowing these achievements. A failure to resolve the dispute respectfully could erode public trust and strengthen perceptions of authoritarianism. Legal and cultural precedents. The absence of clear laws governing the funerals of former presidents, as noted by John Sangwa, highlights the need for legislative reform. The dispute could prompt Zambia to establish protocols to prevent similar conflicts, balancing state authority with family rights. Culturally, the saga challenges Zambia's Christian values of unity and forgiveness, as articulated by religious leaders like Emmanuel Chikoya. Social implications. National unity. The funeral dispute has deepened divisions between Lungu's supporters and Hichilema's base, pace, particularly along regional and ethnic lines. The PF strongholds in eastern and northern provinces, contrasted with the UPND's support in southern and western provinces, could exacerbate regional tensions if the dispute is not resolved. Public fatigue. The prolonged saga has led to public fatigue, as noted in BBC reports, with many Zambians feeling that the focus on the funeral detracts from pressing issues like unemployment and the cost of living. This fatigue could translate into political apathy or increased support for alternative parties in 2026. Economic implications. Distraction from economic challenges. Zambia's ongoing economic recovery following its 2020 debt default requires focused governance. The funeral dispute has dominated public discourse, diverting attention from critical issues like debt restructuring, copper production, and drought-induced electricity rationing. Continued distraction could hinder Hichilema's economic agenda. International perception. The global media's focus on the dispute risks portraying Zambia as unstable, potentially deterring investors in its copper industry, which accounts for 70% of exports. A resolution that projects unity and stability could bolster Zambia's attractiveness as an investment destination. Analysis. The funeral dispute is a microcosm of Zambia's broader challenges, reconciling personal and political histories, balancing state authority with individual rights, and maintaining national unity in a polarized democracy. The outcome of the dispute, whether through negotiation, court rulings, or compromise, will shape public perceptions of Hichilema's leadership and the PF's viability as an opposition force. The saga also highlights the fragility of Zambia's opposition, as Lungu's death leaves a vacuum that could lead to single-party dominance if the PF fails to regroup. The dispute's resolution will also have cultural and legal ramifications. A law clarifying funeral protocols for former presidents could prevent future conflicts, while a culturally sensitive resolution could reinforce Zambia's Christian identity and commitment to reconciliation. Economically, resolving the dispute swiftly is crucial to refocusing on Zambia's recovery and maintaining its regional and global standing. Broader implications. Zambia's future hinges on its ability to navigate this crisis with maturity and inclusivity. A prolonged dispute risks entrenching divisions, weakening democratic checks and balances, and undermining economic progress. Conversely, a resolution that honors both Lungu's legacy and national tradition could strengthen Zambia's democracy, foster reconciliation, and position Hichilema as a leader capable of uniting a fractured nation. The 2026 elections will be a critical test, as the dispute's fallout could influence voter sentiment and the opposition's ability to mount a credible challenge. Conclusion. The saga surrounding Edgar Lungu's death and funeral is a complex interplay of personal grief, political rivalry, legal battles, and national identity. The headlines: Beyond the Funeral Mystery, Esther Lungu's silent struggles revealed, HH under pressure, hidden challenges in State House, Pretoria's shocking revelation uncovered, the global fallout, Africa and the world react, and what this means for Zambia's future, capture the multifaceted nature of this crisis. Esther Lungu's determination to honor her husband's wishes, Hichilema's struggle to assert state authority while maintaining unity, and the Pretoria court's intervention have turned a moment of mourning into a national and international spectacle. For Zambia, the dispute underscores the need for reconciliation, legal clarity, and a focus on economic and social priorities. For Africa and the world, it highlights the challenges of post-colonial governance, where personal and political histories often collide. The resolution of this crisis, whether through compromise, court rulings, or mutual respect, will shape Zambia's future, determining whether it can emerge as a united, stable democracy or remain mired in division and distrust.